The silence in the apartment didn't feel like peace anymore. It felt like a deadline. I sat on the edge of the velvet sofa, the one we'd picked out together because it felt appropriately queer, and stared at the framed photo on the mantel. 8 years. That's how long I'd spent with Mark. 8 years of being happily tethered to a man who was, by all accounts, perfect. He was kind, he was stable, and he loved me with a devotion that should have been enough. But you can't build a fire out of friendship, no matter how much you like the person holding the matches. The dead bedroom wasn't a tragedy. It was a symptom. It was the quiet, polite protest of a body that knew its own truth before my brain did. Leaving him felt like jumping off a moving train. It was terrifying, messy, and absolutely necessary. I did it because I was gay. I did it because I wanted to finally see myself in the eyes of a woman. And then, I found Jules. Jules was everything. A butch girl with a leather jacket and a laugh that sounded like a dare. She was rad. That's the word I always used. When we started dating, it felt like the universe was finally paying me back for the 8 years of just fine. I was a lesbian. I was out. I was home. Then came the second year. Then came the conversation. I'm trans, he had said. FTM. I remember the way the air left the room. I remember the way I nodded, the way I held his hand, the way I told him, and myself, that it didn't change anything. I tried. I tried with every fiber of my being to be the supportive partner. I wanted to be the exception to the rule. But as the transition progressed, as the she became he, the familiar coldness started creeping back into my chest. The same coldness I felt with Mark. My heart didn't care about the history or the soul. My heart was stubborn. It turned out I was still gay. I looked at the ring box on the coffee table. We were going to get married. I had left a man to be with a woman, only for that woman to become a man. If my life were a movie, the audience would be howling at the irony. But sitting here in the quiet, it didn't feel like a comedy. It felt like standing at the bottom of a mountain I had already climbed once, staring at the peak, wondering if I had the strength to start the hike all over again. Chapter 2. The Weight of Two Truths. The kitchen smelled like coffee and the faint, metallic scent of the testosterone gel Jules, no, Julian, kept in the bathroom cabinet. It was a smell that had become the scent of his happiness, and yet, to me, it smelled like an ending. He was standing by the counter, back turned, wearing a t-shirt that finally fit his shoulders the way he'd always dreamed they would. He looked comfortable. He looked like himself. And every time I looked at him, I felt like a traitor. "You're quiet today," Julian said, turning around. His voice had dropped an octave over the last 6 months. It was rich, resonant, and entirely masculine. Just thinking, I lied. It was the same lie I'd told Mark 5 years ago. About the venue. He stepped closer, sliding his arms around my waist. "Because if you want the botanical garden, we should probably call them before the weekend." I looked up at him. I saw the man he was becoming, the man he had always been underneath the surface, and I felt a wave of genuine love for him. But it was the wrong kind of love. It was the best friend love. It was the "I'll help you bury a body" love. It wasn't the "I want to wake up and melt into you" love. The irony was a physical weight in my throat. I had spent nearly a decade trying to fit myself into a heteronormative box with Mark, only to break out, find a woman, and wind up right back in a relationship with a man. The universe wasn't just laughing, it was mocking my GPS. "Julian," I said, my voice trembling. I stepped back, breaking the circle of his arms. "We need to talk. Really talk." The light in his eyes shifted. He knew that tone. He'd heard it from his own reflection, probably, during the hard years. "Is this about the transition?" he asked softly, his posture guarding against a blow he'd likely been expecting since the first shot. "It's about me," I said, the words tasting like ash. "I spent so long running toward my truth, Jules. I thought I'd finally reached it. But I can't. I can't be with a man. Even if that man is you." I saw the moment his heart broke, and it mirrored mine. We were two people who had finally found ourselves, only to realize that who we were didn't fit together anymore. I'm gay, I whispered, the word feeling like a lifeline and a death sentence all at once. I'm still gay. And if I stay, if we get married, I'm just going back to the dead bedroom. I'm going back to the girl who hides. I can't do that to me. And I definitely can't do that to you. The silence that followed was longer than the 8 years I'd left behind. Chapter 3: The Ghost of a Pattern. Moving out is a mechanical process that shields you from the emotional one. Tape the box. Label the box. Forget that the box contains the last 3 years of your hope. I was back in a studio apartment that smelled like fresh paint and loneliness. It was smaller than the place I shared with Mark, and infinitely quieter than the home I'd built with Julian. I sat on the floor among a sea of cardboard, clutching a mug of tea that had gone cold an hour ago. My phone buzzed on the hardwood. A text from my sister, "How are you holding up?" Also, Mom asked if you're sure this time. I told her to shut up. I didn't reply. How could I explain sure? I was sure I was a lesbian. I was sure I loved Julian. I was also sure that those two facts were now a pair of tectonic plates grinding against each other until my entire life turned into rubble. I stood up and walked to the small bathroom mirror. I looked at the woman staring back. She looked older. There were fine lines around her eyes that hadn't been there when she'd left Mark. Back then, I thought I was escaping a mistake. Now, I realized I hadn't made a mistake. I just lived through a very long, very complicated cosmic coincidence. I pulled up a dating app, my thumb hovering over the screen with a mixture of nausea and defiance. Filter. Women. It felt like a political statement. It felt like a prayer. I started scrolling, but every face I saw felt like a potential heartbreak waiting to transition, or a ghost of the life I'd just dismantled. Left a man to be gay just for the first woman I'd date after to turn into a man. I should put that in my bio. Warning: my presence may trigger a journey of masculine self-discovery. I'm not a girlfriend, I'm a catalyst. I tossed the phone onto the mattress. I wasn't ready to swipe. I wasn't even ready to eat. I went to the window and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Mark was probably with someone who actually wanted to be in his bed. Somewhere out there, Julian was finally living as the man he was meant to be. And here I was. The common denominator. The girl who kept choosing the right person at the wrong stage of their evolution. I leaned my forehead against the cool glass. For the first time in a decade, there was no man in my life, no best friend roommate, no fiancé. It was just me and the quiet. It was terrifying. But as I watched the cars go by, a small, stubborn thought took root. At least this time, I wasn't pretending. Chapter 4: The Paradox of the First Date. The bar was called the Alibi, which felt a little too on the nose for a woman whose entire dating history felt like a series of complicated excuses. I'd spent 3 months in my studio apartment, becoming intimate with the sound of my own thoughts and the specific hum of a refrigerator that didn't quite close right. I'd scrubbed the catalyst energy off my skin. Or so I hoped. Then came Maya. She was a landscape architect with a soft undercut and a laugh that didn't sound like a challenge, it just sounded like a laugh. We'd matched on an app, exchanged 3 days of banter about the best way to kill a succulent, neglect versus overwatering, and now, here I was. "You're staring at your drink like it's a crystal ball," Maya said, leaning in. Her perfume smelled like cedar and something bright, like citrus. It was a decidedly feminine scent, and for a split second, my brain did a frantic reboot. "Just checking for omens," I said, trying for a smirk. "The last time I was on a first date, I ended up engaged to a man. It's a long story." Maya tilted her head, her dark eyes curious. "A man? I thought your profile said." "It did. It does." I took a long sip of my gin and tonic. The botanical bitterness helped ground me. "I have a very specific superpower, Maya. I am the final boss of repressed masculinity. I date women, and they realize they are men. It's happened more than once, if you count the 8 years I spent trying to be straight with my best friend." I expected her to look for the exit. Instead, she let out a low whistle. That's a heavy resume. You're like a human chrysalis. Exactly, I sighed. I'm the bridge. People cross me to get to who they really are, and I'm just left standing over the water, wondering where the hell my ride is. Maya laughed, a genuine, warm sound that made the tension in my shoulders drop an inch. Well, for what it's worth, I've been out since I was 16. I've done the therapy, I've had the buzz cut phase, the fam phase, and the I'm just wearing flannel forever phase. I'm pretty settled in my skin. She reached across the table, her fingers brushing the back of my hand. Her skin was soft. Her nails were short. She felt like a woman. For the first time in years, I felt a spark that wasn't shadowed by a but. There was no but he's my best friend, and no but she's actually a he. It was just a girl, in a bar, touching my hand. So, Maya whispered, her eyes locking onto mine. Are you still looking for omens, or are you ready to just be on a date? I looked at her, then down at our joined hands. The cosmic joke was still there, lurking in the background of my life, but the punchline didn't feel so sharp anymore. I think, I said, finally letting myself smile back, I'm ready for the date. But as we stood up to leave, I caught a glimpse of a familiar jacket near the door. A broad-shouldered man was walking out, his gait unmistakable. My heart did a sharp, painful leap. It wasn't Julian, not really, but for a second, the ghost of my past marriage that wasn't walked right past me. I gripped Maya's hand a little tighter. The past wasn't gone. It was just behind me. Chapter 5. The Mirror in the Street. The cool night air hit us as we stepped out of the alibi. Maya was humming something low and melodic, her hand still tucked firmly into mine. It felt natural. It felt like the kind of easy, uncomplicated evening I had spent a decade dreaming about. Then, I saw him. He was standing under a street lamp half a block away, checking his phone. The light caught the sharp line of a new jawline, the result of months of stubborn growth and sheer willpower. He was wearing a denim jacket I recognized, the one we'd bought together at a vintage shop when I still called him she. It was Julian. My heart did a frantic, confused stutter. It wasn't the skip of a lover, it was the jolt of a ghost sighting. Maya felt me freeze. She followed my gaze, her grip tightening slightly in a silent question. Is that? She started, her voice soft. Yeah, I breathed. That's him. Julian looked up then. Our eyes met across the sidewalk. For a split second, the world narrowed down to the two of us, the woman who had stayed too long and the man who had finally arrived. I braced myself for the wave of guilt, the familiar ache of the dead bedroom, or the sharp sting of the wedding that never happened. But as Julian started to walk toward us, I saw something that stopped the breath in my lungs. He wasn't walking with the slouched, defensive posture of the girl I used to know. He moved with a quiet, grounded confidence. He looked whole. Hey, he said, stopping a respectful distance away. His voice was deeper now, fully settled. Alex. Hey, Julian, I managed. I didn't let go of Maya's hand. I couldn't. He looked at Maya, then back at me. A small, genuine smile touched his lips, not a smirk, not a mask, but a look of pure recognition. You look good, he said. Really good. You too, I said, and for the first time, I meant it without a but attached. You look like you. I am, he said simply. He shifted his weight, and I realized he wasn't looking at me with longing. He was looking at me with the kind of fondness you reserve for a favorite childhood home, a place you loved, but a place you've outgrown. I'm heading to meet some friends. I'm glad I ran into you. He nodded to Maya, gave me one last, lingering look of closure, and turned to walk away. I watched him go. He wasn't the man I had failed to love. He was the man who had finally freed me to find someone I could. The cosmic joke hadn't been a trick played on me. It was a transition for both of us. He had to become him, and I had to realize that I couldn't be his everything if I wasn't being my own. Maya squeezed my hand. You okay? I turned back to her. The street lamp caught the light in her eyes, and for the first time in years, the reflection I saw wasn't a catalyst or a bridge. It was just a woman. A gay woman, standing in the dark, ready to go home. "I'm better than okay," I said, pulling her closer. "I'm sure." Chapter 6. The Unwritten Anniversary. A year later, the cosmic punchline had lost its sting. It had become a story I told at dinner parties, a cautionary tale turned into a comedy set, usually ending with me raising a glass to the absurdity of it all. I was sitting on a new sofa. It wasn't velvet, and it didn't feel appropriately anything. It just felt like home. Maya was in the kitchen, the rhythmic thud-thud-thud of a knife against a cutting board providing the soundtrack to my afternoon. My phone buzzed. A notification from a social media app, on this day, 2 years ago. I clicked it before I could stop myself. It was a photo of me and Julian. We were at a pre-wedding tasting, grinning over a plate of hors d'oeuvres. I looked tired in the photo, that specific, deep-seated exhaustion that comes from trying to love someone in a language you don't speak. He looked hidden. Even then, behind the feminine haircut and the dress, he looked like he was holding his breath. "What are you looking at?" Maya asked, leaning over the back of the sofa, a piece of bell pepper in her hand. I showed her the screen. The ghosts of relationships passed. Maya looked at the photo, then at me. She didn't get jealous. She didn't get insecure. She just popped the pepper into her mouth and nodded. "You look like you're bracing for impact." "I was," I said, locking the phone and tossing it aside. I spent 8 years bracing for impact with Mark, then 3 years doing it with Julian. I thought that's just what love felt like. A constant, low-grade bracing. And now. I pulled her down onto the sofa next to me. Now, I'm just sitting. It was a simple thing, but it was the biggest victory of my life. There was no dead bedroom. There was no hidden identity waiting to dismantle our foundation. There was just the quiet reality of 2 women who were exactly who they claimed to be. The doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I opened it, there was a small package on the mat. No return address, just a note tucked under the string. "Found this in an old box. Thought you should have it. P.S. I'm engaged. He's a great guy. Hope you're finally winning at the joke. J." Inside the box was a small, ceramic cat we'd bought at a flea market years ago. It was ugly, chipped, and completely meaningless to anyone else. But it was a white flag. A final blessing from the man who used to be my wife-to-be. I set the cat on the bookshelf, right next to a photo of me and Maya hiking in the redwoods. "Who was it?" Maya asked from the kitchen. "Just a friend," I called back. And for the first time in my life, when I said a man was just a friend, it wasn't a tragedy. It wasn't a lie. It was the simplest, truest thing in the world. I walked into the kitchen, wrapped my arms around Maya's waist, and breathed in the scent of cedar and citrus. The joke was over. I had finally reached the part of the story where I got to stay. To everyone following along with Alex's story, subscribe if you want to see more deep dives into the messy, hilarious, and beautiful realities of finding yourself. Comment below. Have you ever felt like the universe was playing a very specific joke on your dating life? How did you find your way to the other side?